Everyone loves a parade. The celebrations, whether it's a 4th of July parade, a Veterans Day parade, a Memorial Day parade, maybe even an Easter parade, whatever it is, people love parades. Parades are something that we do to celebrate a holiday or something. Or when we have a person who served in our military come home from overseas, they're greeted with a parade to welcome them home. This is not a new idea. If you look back in the Bible and in history in general, whenever a conquering army came back and won, they were greeted with a parade. People would celebrate how a king had taken over another land. And that's the scene that we have in John chapter 12. We have a parade. People are celebrating and welcoming Jesus. John, remember, is an eyewitness to all these events. He was there that very first Sunday. We call it Palm Sunday, when Jesus makes his way into Jerusalem to begin Holy Week. John tells us in chapter 12 that people greet Jesus on the road. They greet him and they welcome him into Jerusalem. And so they cut down palm branches and they're waving them and they're shouting, "Hosanna, Hosanna," which means save us. And they're laying their cloaks on the road, and they're welcoming Jesus as a conquering hero. And that's what they think Jesus has come to do. He's come to conquer the Romans. His disciples think that he's come to Jerusalem to set up his earthly kingdom. John tells us that there were 3 groups of visitors to Jerusalem. This is during the celebration of Passover. And so it was always customary to go up to the temple and offer a sacrifice at the celebration of Passover. And then you had the group of people who'd been there when Jesus had brought Lazarus back from the dead. When he said, "Lazarus, come out," and Lazarus walked out of the tomb. People had seen that and they followed Jesus to Jerusalem, and so they were there. And then you had the Pharisees who were concerned about Jesus and the trouble that he would bring. So the people, they thought Jesus had come to conquer the Romans. The disciples thought he'd come to set up his kingdom. But Jesus, he came to defeat someone much bigger than the Romans. It wasn't just the Romans he came to defeat. It's an enemy that continues to haunt you and me each day, the devil. Jesus, he rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, but it wasn't a conquering moment. It was a moment to welcome him to Jerusalem, because in just a few days later, the crowd that had shouted, "Hosanna, Hosanna," and said, "Son of David," would turn those shouts as the chief priests would egg them on Good Friday to say, "Crucify him, crucify him." And the crowds would go from welcoming him with palm branches to watching Jesus struggle to carry his cross outside the city to be crucified. Jesus came that Palm Sunday. He came to defeat not just the Romans, but to defeat Satan, death, and eternal separation from God. And that's what Jesus did. He would later go on and he would journey to the cross and he would defeat those things. And we will remember those things on Good Friday, the day when Jesus died. And then we celebrate how he rose from the dead, how he defeated death for us. So we are reminded on Palm Sunday of how Jesus came into Jerusalem. But he didn't come in as a conquering hero. He came into a parade to a people that were excited to see him. But he came to defeat something much bigger than the Romans. He didn't come to set up his empire. He came to save you and me. So when we shout, "Hosanna, Hosanna," save us, we have been saved because of Jesus' death on the cross. If you would like to know more about Palm Sunday, about Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, how it fulfilled the Old Testament prophecies, please join us for worship here at St. Matthew, or you can visit us on our website at www.stmats.net.